The US government just released new dietary guidelines, meaning they recommend people to eat quite differently than they used to, because they pretty much flipped the food pyramid upside down, as if you weren't confused enough already about what healthy eating actually means. So I thought I would break this down, simply tell you what exactly changed, why some parts of it are very controversial and being discussed a lot on the internet and by experts, and what, if anything, you should take from it. Let's get into it. So first, let's talk about what's new. The biggest change is basically that they used to say the main part of your diet should consist of carbs and mainly grains. But now they put grains on the bottom of the pyramid, meaning you should eat pretty little of that, and instead they put protein and vegetables at the top. Specifically, that means that they used to say that you should aim for 0.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. But now, finally, they acknowledge that that is not optimal, but instead that the average person should aim for 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. And this is for the average person, not for the very active person who works out and wants to gain muscle. So they basically doubled the amount of recommended protein, which if you've been watching my channel, you know that I'm a big fan of, because protein is very important for so many health and fitness related goals. So finally, even the officials are acknowledging that. And not only do they say that you should get more protein, but they also say you should get it primarily from animal sources, which is one of the biggest controversies about this new pyramid. But we'll talk about that later. Another big change is that they used to say that you should eat low fat, and now they finally acknowledge that healthy fats are very, very, very important and should be prioritized. You can see that by the olive oil, the avocado, but even, and again, this is one of the big controversies, fats from animal sources like butter, eggs, and full-fat dairy. They also reduced the maximum recommended amount of added sugars from 10% of your daily calorie intake to 2%, but this is added sugar only. We're not talking about fruits or anything like that. And they removed basically all refined grains from the pyramid and also reduced the amount of even complex grains that you should be consuming. And this is, like I said, one of the biggest changes, because in the past, everybody, whether you went to a restaurant, to a cafeteria, or probably also in your head, when you were thinking about meal planning, basically was based on the carb source, like pasta with or bread with da-da-da, or rice with da-da-da. And now they're saying that that is not the right approach. And while refined grains like, white pasta, white bread is not the most nutritious thing you can eat. First, I think this might confuse many people to think that white flour is unhealthy and should be banned completely, which is something that some people say you should do. I do not think that. I think even simple carbs can be beneficial if you work out, because they give you a lot of energy pretty fast. And also many yummy things contain simple carbs, and I don't think you should cut out all yummy things from your life, but that's just my humble opinion. But also I think that putting grains, even whole grains, at the bottom of the pyramid might lead many people, including women, to think that we should cut out carbs as much as possible. And this, I think, is a bit dangerous, because while for men the ketogenic diet, aka low carb diets, might be beneficial, for women it's not a smart idea. Research shows that we need carbs, at least healthy carbs, aka complex carbs, not refined carbs. Why? Because our female physiology is a lot more sensitive to stress and low energy availability. And there's more and more research that shows that low carb can in some women lead to menstrual dysregularities, increase cortisol, reduce recovery from workouts and reducing overall performance, and also to worsen thyroid markers, particularly reducing the thyroid hormone T3, meaning going low carb, at least for a longer period of time, might slow down your metabolism. And that is especially true if a low carb diet is combined with calorie restriction, working out a lot, or poor sleep or high stress. So this part, I think, once again, is based on research that has been done on men who can be fine with going low carb. And this part, I think, does not get enough attention in the media yet when it comes to discussions about the pyramids. Probably because most of these discussions are, once again, led by men. But apart from the carb thing, what is controversial about this pyramid? Well, especially that there are a lot of animal products, both lean and fatty animal products, aka butter, full-fat dairy, steak, at the top of the pyramid. Even though all of the experts used to say that we should not eat steak or, beef in general, that we shouldn't eat full-fat dairy, that butter is bad, and now they are kind of contradicting that. So what the hell is true? So these fatty animal products are very controversial because mainly they contain a lot of saturated fats. And excessive consumption of saturated fats has been shown to be linked to high LDL cholesterol, so the bad cholesterol levels in your blood, which is a known risk for heart disease. However, there's research that shows that it's not about the absolute amounts of saturated fats that you eat, but instead it's about the ratio of saturated fats versus unsaturated fats, which would mean that you can have as much fatty beef as you want, as long as you also have a lot of, for example, olive oil or salmon with it. But even that is not that straightforward, because there's also research that shows that saturated fats is not linked to cardiovascular diseases. If that fat comes from, for example, dark chocolate, dairy, or unprocessed meat. Unprocessed is the key word here. And that's again one of the problems with nutrition science, that so often they don't control for the details. For example, when they look at the bad effects of eating meat, especially red meat, very often they look at the people who eat a lot of processed meats or red meats, aka sausages, burgers, things like that. And one of the least controversial things in nutrition research is that processed meats are unhealthy. But that does not mean that the natural form of that meat, if it's high quality, is unhealthy as well. So what does that mean for your steak and your butter consumption? There's no clear answer, because science is controversial. Still, to this day. If you want my personal recommendation, if you're a healthy person, have your steak, have your butter. Just try to get it from healthy, organically raised animals. Now that is the most controversial thing about the pyramid, but there's one more thing. And that is that plant protein is not really findable. I didn't even see lentils or soy. Maybe these things here, but I don't know if that's supposed to be legumes. And that is controversial because research shows pretty consistently that plant-based proteins, especially coming from legumes like lentils or beans, is linked to a lot of health benefits, including lower risk of heart diseases and also lower risk of mortality from basically all diseases and also from stroke. You probably heard that the Mediterranean diet is one of the healthiest diets you can follow, and one of the things that the Mediterranean diet includes a lot of is legumes. So this part that the legumes are healthy is pretty much undisputed. Still, it's not, at least not at the top of this pyramid. And, you know, maybe it's here, but it's not very prominent. But apart from the details, what is the main message of this new pyramid? Eat real food. And that is something that luckily all nutrition science is pretty much consistent about, that real food, unprocessed, natural, whole foods are good for you. And ultra-processed foods, including processed meats, chocolate bars, chips, sodas, all that stuff is not good for your body. And natural foods include animal products, even the fatty animal products. Okay, so now that you know what actually changed, does that actually matter to you? Should you change something? Honestly, as always, as so often with any kind of headlines or big changes in some guidelines or guidelines in general, it's not that complicated. In the end, what matters, and this has mattered for a long time, is first eat whole, real foods. It's always been like this. It's probably, hopefully, always gonna be like this. Get enough protein, whether that means 1.6 or 2.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Include a lot of fiber, aka vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes, even though they're not as prominent on the pyramid. Get lots of healthy fats. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the least controversial fats here, or avocado or nuts. Don't overdo added sugars. And as always, keep the 80-20 rule in mind, meaning eat 80% of what you think, what you know is healthy, and for the remaining 20%, eat whatever. No diet has to be 100% perfect, even if you knew how that perfect is supposed to look like. That applies for whether you're talking about saturated fats, added sugars, white carbs, or any other nutrient that keeps cycling through headlines. Healthy eating is really not that complicated. Still, I think that this pyramid can be very helpful, even though it's controversial, because the main message is eating real food, focus on protein and on vegetables. And this is especially important for things like, you know, school cafeterias, work cafeterias, restaurants, maybe even, because hopefully this pyramid will inspire them to not serve mainly pasta and mashed potatoes with a little bit of sauce and maybe, you know, a carrot on the side. And for you personally, my recommendation is focus on whole foods for 80% of the time and follow your own intuition. Which of these whole foods are healthy for you? In this video right here, I talk more about what healthy eating actually means and what the main 3 core pillars of healthy eating are, to simplify healthy eating for you even more, because it's really not that complicated. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.